Hello and welcome to Lady Dynamite Creates. I'm Tiffany and I got a very exciting project to share with you today. An anime collaboration with a talented group of artists. Joining me is our host, Tiffany's Tiny Things, along with Beth Ramsden, Starlight Dream Dolls, Steffo Doll, and the Hatter Dolls. Be sure to check out their channels to see their fantastic creations. Now let's get started and see if I can bring Nezuko from Demon Slayer to life. After some deliberation, I chose a G1 Draculara as my base doll. Her delicate features just radiate charm and make her the perfect pick to bring out Nezuko's sweet essence. With a quick snip, I bid farewell to her old hair and gently pop off her head. A bit of magic and I strip away the factory paint and voila, she's now a fresh blank canvas ready for a transformation. Today we're trying something totally new on my channel, giving this doll some luxurious Suri alpaca hair. And not just any alpaca hair, I'm processing it myself. I got these gorgeous locks from Alpaca Meadows, and let me tell you, they are so soft. They arrived cleaner than raw locks, which saves me a bit of work. First up, I carefully pull apart each lock and comb out the cut ends to remove the undercoat. This step is key because if I skip it, the undercoat could felt into the hair when I'm washing it, and I don't want that mess. With the locks sorted and the ends brushed, it's time for the first wash. I use room temperature soapy water and gently dunk the locks, tapping them with my fingers to loosen up any dirt. No scrubbing, friction is the enemy and can turn soft, fluffy locks into felt, which is great for crafting, but not for doll hair. Even though these locks had a pre-wash before they got to me, the water still turns murky fast, so I bring in a fresh bowl of clean water to make sure all the soap is gone. Since I'm planning to dye this hair, I need to be absolutely sure there's no soap residue left behind. Enter a vinegar rinse. A couple of tablespoons does the trick, followed by one final rinse with clean water. Could I have blown dry this hair? Yes. Would it have ended in chaos? Absolutely. So instead, I let it dry overnight. Now that it's dry, it's time to grab my pet hairbrush and gently work through any tangles. I start at the ends and work my way up. This prevents any breakage, and I always keep a firm grip on the lock so I don't accidentally yank it apart. Time for some color. Since alpaca hair is a protein fiber just like human hair, I can use regular hair dye. I work in small sections to make sure every strand is evenly coated, and flip the sections to get both sides. The very tips of the hair needs to be a vibrant orange, so I go on with bright auburn dye, carefully making sure I'm coloring the correct end. Note to future me, if I ever do a gradient again, I need to leave extra space at the top for the rooting area or weft. Lesson learned. And here's the final result. The hair is incredibly soft, and while the orange didn't turn out quite as vibrant as I hoped, that's more about my dye choice, so it's good to know for next time. And yes, there will be a next time because I'm definitely using this luscious hair again. Wig making, not exactly my strong suit. Those part lines always seem to betray me, so instead I'm going in with a partial reroot. I take a tiny pluck of hair, hold on to the very end, and slide it onto my rerooting needle before plunging it into the doll's head. It sounds dramatic, but she's fine. I'm only focusing on the part, front, and side hairlines for now. Once I finish the face up later, I'll fill in the rest of the head with glued on wefts for that full luscious look. I swear, a little of this alpaca hair goes a long way. This is just the hairline and it's already looking so thick and glorious. I'm seriously loving how this is turning out. Time to get this girl dressed. Nezuko's kimono and obi has some very distinctive patterns, and finding fabric with that level of detail at doll scale, practically impossible. So I made my own, because why not make life harder for myself? I go into more detail about this in a Patreon exclusive video, but the short version is I created a vector off the base pattern, tiled and oriented it just right, then turned that into a Photoshop pattern. From there, I filled a base layer, saved it, and sent it off to Spoonflower for printing. I ordered a fat quarter and a sample, and honestly, this was way more fabric than I needed. I could have easily made 3 full sets of clothing from it. Since I figured others might need it too, I made the print publicly available on Spoonflower. Link at it. The fabric and print quality turned out amazing and I'm super happy with it. For the kimono, I'm using a pattern from Rag Doll, but I modified it a bit. Technically, the white trim should be a separate yuba layer, but to keep things from getting too bulky, I made a little compromise. I also went ahead and hemmed the inside edge of the trim now, since doing it later would have been a lot harder. These pieces will attach to the front opening, but I'm only sewing down the top inch for now since the side seams aren't closed yet. Now you can see why I went with a double layer of white. It creates a neat little pocket to hide the seam allowance, keeping everything looking crisp and tidy. No raw edges peeking out here. Time to sew up the back seam with right sides facing. I thought my pattern placement would make it look seamless in the back, but my calculations were off just slightly. Better luck next time. Next, I fold the collar piece in half, press it flat with my flat iron, then attach it to the kimono's neckline. Now for the inner collar. I only attach it to the back so I can fold it over layer to mimic the layered look of the yuba. Sleeve time! I attach them to the body, then clip and hem the area that will be the opening for the hands so they're nice and neat. Now I can finally close up the sleeves and the side seams. This is where it really starts to look like a proper kimono. I actually hemmed the back sleeve openings earlier, but since this was my first time making this type of garment, I forgot to show that step. With everything coming together, I can finally finish sewing on the white trim. I really want this to look as polished as possible, so after tucking in the seam allowance, I go on with teeny tiny invisible hand stitches on the inside trim. And boom! The kimono is done! It turned out so pretty, and we're not finished yet. Nezuko still needs her obi. The obi is pretty quick to put together. I just sew these 4 pieces to match the one she wears in the show. And just like that, the whole kimono is complete. It turned out so cute, and I was a little nervous since I've never made a garment like this before, but I definitely recommend this pattern. That said, if you're going to try it, do a test run first to get familiar with the steps. I have officially maxed out this kimono pattern because, yep, I'm altering it again to make Nezuko's Haori. Since this piece fits more like a jacket, I'm adding a full lining for that nice clean finish. First things first, I sew up the back seams for both the outer and inner layers. Now I can layer the lining and outer fabric together and stitch them along that front opening and neckline. After an intense wrestling match with the fabric, I finally flip everything right side out and give it a good press to get those crisp, clean edges. Victory! Next up, sleeves. I clip and hem the hand openings, making sure everything is neat. I'm using hem tape for all the garments in this outfit because I really don't want any visible top stitching. Just a personal preference, but I thought it looked better with all of the patterns. Time to attach the sleeves. Once they're in place, I can sew up the bottom and sides of each sleeve. Okay, this part is tricky, and on black fabric, it's nearly impossible to show you. But here's the deal. I tuck the sleeve between the inner and outer layers, and I match up the side seams and carefully sew them together without accidentally catching the sleeve. Hopefully that explanation makes more sense. And finally, I hem the bottom edge to finish off the Haori, and just like that, Nezuko's outfit is complete. Time for accessories, starting with shoes. I decided to model Nezuko a pair of faux flat thong-style sandals and pulled up my ever-growing shoe archive to get started. Yes, this is just one of my many files of doll shoes. I found a pair that would work with some tweaks, so I swapped out the heels and reshaped them to match Nezuko's signature sandals. Fun fact, I used to do 3D modeling for Nintendo DS and Game Boy games, which are super low poly, so working with high poly models still feels a little overwhelming. Because of that, I keep a low poly count until the final touches. Originally, I planned to flatten out her feet and make true flats since I've successfully done this with a heat gun before, but this time, yeah, her feet just melted. Instead of ruining another doll or cutting off her feet and having to resculpt them, I went with a faux flat design instead. Once printed, I gave the shoes a quick cleanup, sanding away any support marks, and got them prepped for painting. My Dynamite tier Patreon supporters received the shoes and the bamboo muzzle as their tier reward for February. Speaking of Patreon, I've got to give a huge shout out to my fabulous supporters. Thank you for being such an amazing crew to share my art with. You're awesome. Angel Book Walter, Awkward Bird, B. Burnett, Cozy Cat, Deborah Sweeney, Jay Zur, Stephanie L, Dancing Johari, Dollicious, Bex Mini Studio, Buniwa, Ellen Daria, Kitsy, Kawa Bell, Lindsay, The Oak Magpie, Tara N. I couldn't forget her bamboo muzzle. I modeled and printed it to scale and then had to figure out how to keep it in place. I'd used magnets before on my Cyberpunk doll's mask, which was way heavier, so I knew that would work. I drilled a tiny hole for a small magnet onto the muzzle and popped a larger one into her head and secured it with glue. Pro tip, do the head magnet first. I didn't, and positioning the polarity correctly after the muzzle was already set was not fun. Off camera, I gave the muzzle a nice paint job and attached the red ribbons with a little bit of super glue. To make sure the muzzle is easily removable, I added a magnetic closure, plus I put an extra magnet in the back of her head so the ribbon sides wouldn't droop. Gotta love a super cute tiny accessory. It's face-up time. Here's a look at all the products I used, various pastels, watercolor pencils, and of course the essential Mr. Super Clear UV Cut Flat. I've prepped the doll's head with 3 coats of MSC, letting each layer fully cure before moving on. Once the final layer was ready, it was time to dive in. Okay, confession time. I had never actually watched Demon Slayer before starting this project. Anime isn't really my thing, so when I was brainstorming characters to make, I turned to my daughter who loves anime. She gave me a few options: Mitsuri from Demon Slayer, which had already been claimed for this collaboration, Luffy from One Piece, and Nezuko. I picked Nezuko purely because I loved her character design, those pink eyes, the fierce but cute vibe, and of course, the whole shrinking down to fit in a box is adorable. But here's where my impulsivity bit me. I figured if I was making Nezuko, I should probably watch the show to get a better sense of her personality. And guess what? I ended up regretting my decision. Not because the show wasn't good or that I didn't like Nezuko, because I really enjoyed it, but because the moment I saw her demon form in action, I wish I would have gone that route instead. The claws, the bulging veins, the asymmetrical horn, and tattoos, it would have been such a cool challenge. By then, though, I'd already bought the kimono pattern for a G1 Monster High doll, and while that doll base fit the classic Nezuko look, it just would not have matched her demon form. I even realized I actually had the perfect base for her demon form too, a Poison Ivy DC superhero doll. She has a bulkier, more muscular build that would have totally suited Nezuko's transformation. But at that point, I was in too deep to start over. So, lesson learned, maybe next time I should watch the show before committing to a design. But hey, classic Nezuko is still iconic, and I'm excited to bring her to life. We're in the home stretch for this face-up and just a few final touches left. I have to say I really like how this is turning out. Her expression is soft and sweet, capturing that pure, gentle innocence that makes Nezuko so endearing. So dreamy and serene. Alright, time to give this girl a full head of hair because I may have left her with a rather large bald spot. Oops. No worries though, I've prepped some of the alpaca hair into wefts and start gluing row upon row along the back of her head until I meet up with the rooted part line. Once the glue is dried, it's time to style. I pull up a small section and tie it off with a strip of fabric. Then give the ends a little spritz of water and scrunch to create those soft, crinkly curls at the bottom. It's such a simple step, but it really adds that final touch to her hair. And let's not forget Nezuko is part of an amazing collaboration with some seriously talented doll artists. You have to check out their incredible dolls. Each one is a mini masterpiece. I've linked their channels down below in the description, so go take a peek. Trust me, they're worth it. Nezuko is all dressed up and ready to find a new home on my Etsy shop. If she's calling your name, head over and take a look. And while you're there, don't miss out on the other fun goodies I've got, like my custom 3D printed shoes that are just way too cute to ignore. Thank you all so much for joining me on this creative adventure. Your support means the world. And remember, always be creating.